Very much indeed, Corla. It's hard to switch from one subject to another. We're just here talking about Bobby Aylward, and it's still in my mind, and what people said is in my mind. And that word or description of him as a Republican stuck with me, and I can't stop thinking about it. I was watching the Civil War television programme last night on RT. I don't know if anyone else saw it, but it stuck out that people fighting each other who were best of friends, who were on the same side one week and then the next week they were at odds. A lot of parties in this House have that roots in that Republican tradition. And in fact, the various socialist parties probably would claim, I believe, I would imagine, a similar understanding. We are all equal as a first premise of socialist thinking. And from a Green Party perspective, one of our four founding principles is absolutely trust in the people, trust in constitutional democratic systems. In fact, trust down to the lowest, most effective level. So we, I think, too, have a Republican bone in our very centre of our body. And I just mention that because I don't think it matters whether you come from Malahide or Mulnavat. I think that that's still important, how you see the world, or how if you come with that Republican tradition, well, that to me is a central test in a way in this democratic House as to what are you actually going to deliver, what are you going to do, what decisions are you going to make. And I think Darragh O'Brien from Malahide comes from the same Republican tradition that we just heard from about the Aylwards in Mulnavat. And that's important in a world where, as the Taoiseach says, it's so easy to play it up as you're the bad guys, we're the good guys, or divide our country between young and old or rural and urban. That doesn't work to me for the people of either rural or urban. And the depiction that ministers, if only they'd care, we'd address the housing crisis, if only you had a similar ethics or belief in the people that we do, we'd all be sorted and not a problem. In my mind, this is a false argument that I don't believe to be true. It's not easy, the job Darragh O'Brien or indeed wider government has, never easy in politics, but you'd have to say, particularly in recent years, in the delivering of housing, there's been a number of headwinds. The fact in COVID that we couldn't get people working in the buildings at the time we most needed the people working on the buildings. The fact that interest rates have just risen, and a lot of the projects that would otherwise get built and funded is now not going to happen, is a real challenge. The fact that the inflation, the global inflation, the price of steel, price of all the raw materials and supply chain is proving difficult, is going to add to all those headwinds. So it's not easy, but I believe the broad approach taken by Minister O'Brien has been the correct one. I think housing for all, more than anything else, the word has it, is Republican in its perspective, and this government, I believe, is looking to deliver that housing for all our people, prioritising first and foremost social housing for those most in need who can't protect or provide for themselves. The statistics are clear in the numbers in meeting our targets this year despite all those headwinds, but particularly scaling up social housing delivery in a way that hasn't been done in this state for many decades, for most of my lifetime. And there are other, if I was to cite examples of real progress, well, in Cabinet today, we were discussing in Cabinet today the various elements that we as a party have been arguing for decades, that we listened to that constitutional case was made 4 or 5 decades ago, that the value of the increased value from zoned land doesn't belong to the landowner, that belongs to the wider people. And we're legislating for that. And legislation, what was condemned and killed this country's housing for decades, the storing of land as a wealth gaining measure, well, we're going to take that on by putting a land use tax that taxes land that isn't zoned, or sorry, zoned but not been developed on. And I heard others argue against that in the radio during the week, and I can understand their concerns, but I think it's the right Republican thing to do. And similarly, the redefinition in my mind in this government that's happening of what can be possible in housing with the introduction of cost rental housing, a critical, historic change towards creating a new form of public housing that's open to everyone, that actually brings the price down in a real way. That's the real sector. We all agree as the rented sectors or young people are being hit hardest, particularly if you're trying to raise a family, well, that cost rental model offers real hope. And Darragh O'Brien, I know I've heard him speak about it, is determined, as this government is, to scale it up massively. And I believe that will be seen as one of the most transformative changes that's coming in this time of real change. I could go on. The Crecona had the town centre's first philosophy, which I believe again is a change from the abandonment of towns that went on for the last 4 or 5 decades, to start bringing people life back into the centre. That's happening under this government with all the challenges that are involved. The Crecona, the Project Hussey, the planning reforms, even just if I look at Cabinet today, significant in my mind, an essential upgrade of our planning system so we can help deliver housing for our people. We can't be on the one hand hammering everyone saying, you know, you're not doing enough on housing, and then when you start to deliver messages, you're doing too much, you're doing the wrong thing, as if there was a magic easy alternative formula. I do not believe there is. So I will vote in support of confidence for our Minister, our colleague, and I do it in the determination that in the next 2 years of this government, we deliver the housing that our people need, and we deliver the change in how we see public housing particularly, and we build back into the centre and build communities in that, which is what is still ringing my ears from hearing the Aylward family be mentioned. It's community that we deliver when we deliver good housing, and we are determined to do that. Thank you.